Hi there, welcome to the first episode of Better Loud Than Too Late. I'm your host, Genevra. I'm going to tell you a little about myself, my background story, what this show is about, my tribute to Pearl Jam, and why I decided to do this podcast. I'm a single mum. I have 2 boys. I live in Adelaide, Australia, and I'm a writer and photographer. So you could say that I identify as a creative person. Expressing myself in creative ways is the best way that I know how to be me. Better Loud Than Too Late is about leveraging the power of creativity to bravely take up your space in this world, even if it feels uncomfortable, because that is what it takes for continual personal growth and how to step into your power. I know that that can be a fairly overused phrase these days, but really everyone has the ability to make a positive contribution to the world. And some of us do it best with creativity. I have struggled with identity all my life, with being assertive, with being comfortable in my own skin, and with living life to my full potential. The only moments where I've felt that I've got a good handle across those insecurities is when I've been in flow on a creative plane. All my life, I've felt like there are 2 sides to me. Half of me has wanted to fade into the background, not be challenged or put on the spot, to avoid conflict, be agreeable, stay introverted. And the other half of me has a tendency to say, I don't think so. Get what you came for, the time is now. So when I think about that battle, that war in my spirit between those 2 sides, I consider when and where it all started. A little bit is from upbringing. A little is from general life conditioning. And the rest is from what I had chosen to see as a limitation, and that's a hearing impairment that I was born with. Any time that I have felt that I was starting to find my feet, I would hold myself back with this limitation. So I'm going to tell you about a time in my childhood which became symbolic of that war in my body. I was in primary school, and it was decided that if I wore a hearing device, then I would do better in terms of connecting with others, comprehending, communicating. So this was in the 80s, and we're not talking about small hearing aids that you can barely see. We're talking about a pioneering device, and I had to wear this black box around my neck that was the size of a remote control. And there were these wires protruding from the device going up to my ear, and there was this constant red light on the device. So if you can imagine, one day I'm appearing, quote, normal, unquote, and the next day I'm walking into the classroom with this machine hanging off me. The kids are like, what the heck is this? And I can imagine they were feeling pretty awkward. They're like, do we talk into the box? Do we talk into her ear? Do we just avoid her altogether? And I don't think I need to go into how embarrassed I felt in that moment. But I don't have a vivid recollection of my feelings. I pretty much blocked it out. It was traumatic in a way for me. Generally, most of us want to be noticed, and some of us want to stand out from the crowd, but not like that. Not for having to wear a black box around your neck. I didn't want my disadvantage on display. If only I'd had the bravery back then to ride my imagination and just tell everyone that it was a teleporter of some sort. That would have been fucking cool. After that, as I went through my life, I was always in two minds about standing out. And if I did get brave and seize the day, I was obsessed with how I was perceived. I wanted to be sure that I was always representing my best self. But the reality is that when you get called to step up, when you have something to offer, when you have an opportunity to do something good, all your parts are going to be on display, whether you like it or not. And that's what I've come to realise. So I still have my two sides, but I spend less time with my doubtful side. It's how I've been able to bring you this podcast. Despite my hearing problem, your problems are your gifts. Now, I wasn't going to share that story from primary school because I've been embarrassed about it for years. I ran it by a friend and they were like, nah, you can't share that. But it was clear from the day of the black box that I wasn't meant to live life in a comfort zone. Many of us have gone through life with identity issues, whatever they may look like. Not only did I struggle through my childhood, but I struggled in my teenage years as well. I hated the way I looked with my thick, confused hair and my dark skin. I was always the shortest person in the room. I either wasn't Italian enough or I wasn't Australian enough. I struggled in my marriage too. The people-pleasing part of me was trying to serve as a wife and as a mother, and then my sense of self was lost between those two roles. But I learned a lot. The other role that I struggled with was as a businesswoman. Because I've grown up with this artist / dreamer / romantic mindset. And I would have so many ideas to try and put myself out there as an artist, but I lacked the tools required to transform those ideas into a successful business. Sometimes that tool could be as simple as self-belief. It didn't help when you've been told as a child that artists don't make money. I finally did crack a winning combination and I ran a wedding photography business for 10 years. But then I burnt out. And during that break, I wrote my first novel. When I think back to the hours that I poured into that manuscript, they were the times that I could grasp who I really was. I was so proud of myself because I'd written on and off as a child, but this was the first time that I had a finished long-form piece of writing. It was 100,000 words, and it was connected to my soul, my identity. I had this new dream to see this novel traditionally published. But then my ex-husband decided to check out, and I felt really lost. I no longer had any inspiration to do anything with the novel. And I even told myself a story back then that if I'd been writing less, then I could have saved my marriage. The story you tell yourself has so much power. So I had no real plan for my future. I didn't know how to heal. I didn't know which parts of me to work on first. I had zero self-worth. And I was devastated because I wanted to be a strong and healthy role model for my kids. And I thought, how am I going to move out of this stuck position? Better Loud Than Too Late is about missed opportunities. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to go to university, but I didn't have the opportunity when I was married, so why not now? I didn't know if it was going to be a good decision, but it was better than being stuck in a stagnant phase, not knowing, not progressing. So I enrolled in a writing and publishing degree at Flinders University, and it brought me out of my shell, just connecting with other creatives in an unfamiliar academic environment. And through the learning space, I began to see things differently. I was also experimenting with other creative mediums, and I was just expanding my horizon on a creative plane. I'm only halfway through the degree, but as far as I'm concerned, uni has served its purpose. It was the best decision that I could have made with my impending divorce. It got me unstuck. The other thing that uni did for me was make me take stock of my skill set and really explore what I could do. I ended up rebranding and I created a new business. All the while, I'm still on the traditional publishing path for my novel, and I'm praying that my manuscript will get into the hands of the right literary agent. The second best decision that I made after my divorce was finalised was to give up alcohol. Your problems are your gifts. But are they even problems? Are they just opportunities for rich life lessons and ultimately blessings? Gratitude for it all, even the pain, is what gives you the grit and grace to push on. If I'd never met my ex-husband, I wouldn't have my kids, who, by the way, teach me new ways to be creative on a daily basis. Writing is definitely my forte, but public speaking and presenting is not. So when someone suggested I do a podcast, I was absolutely terrified. And then I knew that I had to do it. Even when I had to speak up at uni, it didn't matter if I was just introducing myself or explaining an answer, I would break out in this nervous sweat. So one afternoon, I was eating a Barchi chocolate and I was just reading the quote and pretty much just arguing about the merits of the quote to myself. And I thought it would be a good concept to use if I were to go live on Instagram. So I did exactly that. Once a week for 3 months, I went live on my Instagram account. And I remember the first time I hit the live button, I wanted to vomit in my mouth. It was a form of self-torture that I put myself through repeatedly. But I would just talk about my week and I would tie it into the Bachi quote. It was silly, it was awkward, and I was hardly coherent most of the time. But it forced me to do my thing, to get in front of the camera. And then I no longer had anxiety speaking at uni either. It's raining. Better loud than too late doesn't have to be literally loud for you. Whatever action you take, it can be as subtle or as intense as you want, but it's still about taking action. Open that door, show your face, reach out, say something. You might feel exposed because all your parts are on display, even the parts you're not happy about. But so what? You'll be free. You'll be especially free of regret. I want to tell you about the theme music for the show. I'm a huge music lover and a big Pearl Jam fan. Better Loud Than Too Late is actually a lyric from a Pearl Jam song called Amongst the Waves. I was desperate to use that lyric for the title, and I was desperate to use the music. And the way that the theme music came to be is a great parallel for the concept of this show. And I'm so honoured that I received permission from the band to use the music, because Pearl Jam have soundtracked my life. So going back to that war between standing out or staying put, I think you need to have the light and the shade to appreciate the consequences of both statuses. You need to have the contradiction. You need to have the contrast to understand what it would be like if you didn't speak up. I'm empathic as well, and sometimes it just fucking gets too much. And I want to hold back. And it could be a self-care decision. But the moment of truth eventually comes. And I realise, fuck it. Let's wear all the black boxes. Let's send the novel to a publisher. Let's photograph Eddie Vedder. Let's go to uni. Let's do a podcast. Let's. Each episode I'll be chatting to a guest, or there'll be a solo reflection. Season 1 is mainly my friends, people I know, all who have great stories that are filled with lessons and milestones. And we'll talk about how they've pushed through their challenges. There'll be conversations around transformations and transitions and reinventions and breakthroughs. We're going to touch on relationships and health, business, art, more. But creativity is the theme that will be woven throughout. And just to clarify, this podcast isn't just for creatives and artists. It's for anyone who wants to consider how creativity can be used to solve a problem or achieve a goal. Thank you for listening or watching the video. I'm sure you could see or hear me get quite uncomfortable and squirmy at times, but that's precisely the point. So squirm, stretch, grow, blossom. Until next time, I'm Genevra. Better loud than too late. Tune in to episode 2, where I debut the Pearl Jam cover, which will be the theme music for the show. If you'd like to support me, please share this episode with friends, or you can rate or review the show on whichever platform you're listening on.